My name is Bill Finlayson from the University of Oxford, and I'm going to give a talk here on prehistoric heritage, do people care, with my colleagues.
Oroub El-Abed, I'm from Center of Lebanese Studies and I'm based here in Jordan.
And Pascal Flohr of University of Kiel.
So we're going to run through a number of results from projects we've been doing for quite a number of years down in the south of Jordan. And the issue that we want to talk about is this question about, do people care? And here we are outside a very important Neolithic Stone Age site in the south of Jordan. And you can see that the American Ambassadors Fund kindly gave the project funds to put up a fence, to put up a sign, to do various bits of conservation work. But the local community don't really seem to have cared very much for this. They've destroyed the sign, and they've damaged the fence, and in particular, they've smashed down the gate so that this restriction to access has been removed. So it looks very much like the people don't care. But you could also argue that the archaeologists involved didn't care that much. This is the sign when it was first put up. And as you can see, it's just a photograph of the site that anybody standing there could see themselves without needing any photograph assembled on a sign. And the information that they provide in English and in Arabic is in very, very small print, quite high up on the sign, so very hard to read. If you do get close enough to read it, all you can see are lists of the sponsors and donors to the project, and really no information to help anybody understand what's significant or interesting about the site at all. So you can argue that not only do the people not care, but a lot of the time the archaeologists involved don't care very much either. And this sort of attitude may be repeated elsewhere. Here we are at the site of Basta, which we'll talk about more later. And for a long time, this site was left with the open excavation trenches. And around this, a wall was put, basically screening the site from view of the villagers. No interpretation at all was made. And the local community, when we first visited them, complained that the main problem with the site was that the trenches had been left open and their children would fall into them and the rubbish would collect in them. And it was really quite a mess and quite dangerous. And again, you felt that perhaps the archaeological community was letting them down and wasn't really helping them to care about what was going on. So we started a new project, and this is where my colleague Oroub comes in.
Well, the Deep South was a project that aimed to connect the past and the present with the communities in the two Neolithic sites of Basta and Beida. And we discovered that very little did the people know about their past. The cultural development is hardly addressed at schools, universities, or households. The malfunction of the current educational system made it very, very limited for students to know about their past. And the school system did not nurture the relationship between the students and the place, which is a major deficiency that we were able to see through the careless attitude towards the place. This was very much reflected in the survey that we conducted, asking the students and asking young people if they knew anything about their past, from their elderlies or even from those who were involved in digging the sites, archaeologists who were involved in digging the sites with the foreign archaeologists in the two sites.
One of the things we tried to do at the site of Beida, which lies inside the Petra World Heritage Park, was to experiment with the sort of information useful for people. So we put up temporary signs when we were doing work there, effectively market testing the information and trying out different languages, English, French, and German, but always Arabic, so that the local community could see what we were putting up. And eventually, from all this research, we put up permanent signs. And here you can see them. They're on ceramic tiles. They're baked into the ceramic tiles, so they're both resistant to the environment, and particularly the sunshine, but they're also fairly resistant to casual vandalism, and they survive quite well. And they provide the information, but they don't impinge on the site too much. They're low profile, they lie low to the ground so they don't block the view of what you're looking at. And we tried to make sure that there was always a balance between the amount of text, not too much text, and quite a lot of visual material to help explain what was going on, provide information about the site, about the period, and about the preservation of the site and how to look after it. And we began to produce leaflets. This is a draft leaflet about the Neolithic Heritage Trail we developed, looking at a number of sites and a map, providing information. But again, we weren't necessarily reaching the local community. So this is where Oroub was first brought in, was when we started to do a research project and develop local heritage trails with her.
Well, Deep Past, our project's title, as a social asset in the Levant, very much so to address the gaps in the educational system and in the community's interest. We sought to produce leaflets on each archaeological site and distributed these leaflets to locals, to schools, and to main actors as a way to spread the knowledge amongst the people and to draw their attention to their wealth. The whole purpose was for the project to educate people of their own local cultural heritage in these villages. And that was represented in the tangible, such as the archaeological sites, but also making them aware of the intangible heritage, such as the poetry and the oral history.
And here we see a replica of a Neolithic building being built just next to the archaeological site of Beda. And this very much started off as a project to engage the local community with the Neolithic archaeology, as well as an experimental archaeology project, which you can see in the next slide. Yes, thank you. To try to understand more about the past by the archaeologists, really. And you can see here the various reconstruction buildings in various stages of being built. And now they're finished in the picture. So this was based on the archaeology at the site. And this developed much more into an interpretive tool, whereby these reconstructions are key to help visitors understand what the archaeology might have looked like. Because archaeology itself, it's often only some walls which are not completely preserved, no roofs and so on, so not complete buildings. So these buildings are really key in helping people to understand what it might have looked like in the past. And the same here, really, at a Neolithic site called WF16 in Wadi Feinan. And you can see here members of the local community with archaeologists. The members of the local community are bringing in their knowledge of doing constructions with mud bricks. In their case, they often are being used for animal shelters only still at that time. So this is about 10 years ago. But they help deciding how to build the roof so that the water flows off it. So that's what you can see people are doing here with their hands. And that resulted in this structure. You can see it sort of fades into the background, which is interesting. The opening is quite large, larger than usual, but that's for visitors so that they're able to actually get into the building and look into it. So normally in the Neolithic, it would have been a bit different. So we tried to make this balance between making it useful for visitors and being actually exactly like a Neolithic building. So what you can see here is you see this building against the background of the archaeological site, and you can't really see the site in the background because that's completely backfilled to protect the archaeology. But in any case, it would have been very difficult for people to understand what was going on because there's all these low mud walls that are preserved, and it's not very clear. Even for archaeologists, it's not very clear. So again, this reconstruction building helps to understand, to interpret for visitors what a house maybe, or in any case a structure in the Neolithic might have looked like. And here also there are the signs in the same manner as the signs that you've seen before, with plenty of images and in both in Arabic and English, so to cater for local and regional visitors as well as visitors from further away.
And we take the process of reconstruction to explain the sites a little bit further. Visual reconstruction drawings are a relatively easy way of allowing more detailed and more imaginative interpretation than reconstructions. But unfortunately, at some places, they may involve too much imagination, as in this drawing here, which is of another famous Neolithic site, this one in Turkey, where unfortunately it looks a bit more like some sort of reconstruction of the last of the Mohicans rather than a Middle Eastern Neolithic population. Reconstruction is also used as a popular tool in television documentaries and film reconstructions, as in this one, which was done for National Geographic. And at this point, you can see one of the problems is, of course, is that they sometimes reinforce cultural stereotypes. So the Neolithic people here, which are representatives of the local Bedouin community and a woman actor from Amman, are dressed very much like classic sort of Stone Age figures in a far more primitive way than people would have lived in the Neolithic. And they're given the background of one of the half-completed buildings to make it look, again, a bit more primitive, unfinished, and in the deep past. One of the things about the reconstructions is that they are the things that when people come to visit the site, they can understand. And in a sense, people often come to actually visit the reconstructions rather than the much harder to interpret archaeological remains. So here you can see, while we were actually working on them, a group of people, tourists, into the Petra region coming past the site. And one of the things was, as we started to work there, that the number of visitors to this fairly poorly advertised Neolithic site began to get into the thousands every week, just coming to see what was going on and coming to look at the reconstructions and to understand about the Neolithic. The reconstructions are also very important for our educational program, which again was part of Oroub's activities.
Well, the research sought to hold several events on site and brought in many locals to listen to the research details and to the project sites. So the project aimed to educate many of the local residents through tours with archaeologists to the site and pushed them to improvise and appreciate the wealth of their heritage. The class education, unfortunately, limits the interest and the knowledge for students. So little did they know, national students know about their past, not only those who are living in Basta and Beida, but also at the national level. And they were not even assisted to learn about their past and to establish their relationship with the place through holding visits and taking them into archaeological visits to know the past on the site. So our project sought to invite students from both schools and cultural centers within these two areas to visit the field and to understand the past and to understand the history of the place. So school educational system, school curriculum, and household education are clearly very important niches to nurture the cultural momentum that builds really the passion and the love between the student citizens and the place. And that was very much of a missing point. We go to this second event, and then here we talk about reaching out to the wider community. What Deep South has done has successfully raised the awareness, not only of students, and not only of young people, but also reached out at both Basta and Beida's communities about the value of its Neolithic heritage, and also revealed the importance and the rich heritage of which the local community is equally proud. So this was done through community gatherings and cultural festivals, inviting the older people of the community, along with the younger ones, to listen to the past, to listen to the stories, and to talk to each other, being aware of what is happening in their site and what is really what does it mean to have a Neolithic site in the middle of their, or in the heart of their village. This was not very much really limited. This is the next slide. Was not at all limited to talking only to the locals, the young and the elderlies, but also reaching out to the media in order to spread the knowledge to the national level. And we finish with this one, which is the trail. Well, Deep Sal research has been part of the current UNESCO coordinated Petra integrated development plan, and Deep Sal's work continued to develop the Neolithic heritage trail, which is planned to start in Wadi Finan, including Beidab as a key point along the trail that sought since some time to establish a Neolithic heritage trail for Jordan, particularly the southern of Jordan, which is extremely rich with archaeological sites.
One of the main reasons of the way we approached this project the way we did was we wanted to develop a bottom-up project, something that was actually sustainable with the local communities. There are a large number of heritage communities around the country of Jordan and elsewhere, of course, where there have been big grants awarded, a lot of money spent, but very little impact or long-lasting impact on the ground. And we wanted to approach this the other way and actually spend relatively little money, but engage the local community in a long-term interest in the archaeology. So we've cautiously developed this Neolithic heritage trail so that it develops more organically rather than just something imposed on the landscape. And as Oroub said, one of the things that we're doing very much is to develop the social and economic benefits of Neolithic heritage, to get people to buy into the whole process so that they have an interest in preserving the sites themselves, so that they have an interest in the heritage, so that they understand where they and their lives fit into this long developing human landscape. And that's really what we're all about, is to try and get local people to understand how they fit into their own landscape and how they fit into their own cultural heritage landscape, and how this applies more widely, because this is very much an international heritage asset. So thank you very much for listening to us. And that's our presentation. Thank you.